Hello and welcome to another special Cracking the Cryptic, where I'm having a look at the listener crossword. Now this time what I'm looking at is my solve of listener number 4482 called A Paper Construction by Zero. So what I did was, as usual, I created the grid in my Sympathy software, and also a list of clues, a list of the clue numbers in case that was going to be useful. And then I called up the puzzle, and this is the start of my solve here. So first of all, a read of the preamble. 15 answers don't fit their places in the grid and must be entered with spaces or extending into the central area, forming a thematic song title. In 16 clues, an extra word must be removed before solving. Extra words are thematic. Then something about making two folds at the end. We'll come back to that. And the extra words in down clues describe a quantity closely approximated by the entire grid, the exact form of which could have made the shape symmetry perfect. The quantity must be entered in the central area beside the song title. Solutions need not be submitted in folded form, but the creases must be evident. So some weird folding stuff to do, as the title suggests, at the end. But the key things to note are that there's quite a few extra words in the clues that will have to be ignored while solving, and that could affect how we solve. And there are some spaces to be left. So one down, a very straightforward anagram. Separate mixture of reagents. Anagram of reagents is strange. Now one across, we start getting into the weirder words of listener crosswords. Story about start of dark age in history. And story there is a lie, as in telling a story. So that turned about gives EIL. The start of dark is D. And one of the kind of historic forms of old, meaning in age or age, is EILD. Now 14 across, lunatic, quite a common anagram indicator, owns where sermon was given. So lunatic owns suggests snow, beginning with S. The last word in the clue is plant, so we're probably looking for a plant. Where sermon was given, I'm thinking the sermon was given on the mount, so I've started filling in snow mount, thinking it'll be a snow mountain plant of some sort, but that didn't quite make sense with the rest of the clue. I couldn't see where one in aircraft came from, so kind of gave that up. Jumped across to 20 across, retail, hawk perhaps to make good donkey, and I thought to retail was to hawk, as in they both mean to sell, so I thought donkey was the extra word at that point. 22 across, Australian with strongly affected English accent, looks like a fair clue for acute, unless the strongly is possibly an extra word, although strongly affected might be what defines cut. So not entirely sure about that. And I think I've gone back to check the preamble and kind of work out, oh no, I've made a mistake in setting up the grid, so I fixed that. And then we get back on to the clues. So a few solved, and I mean, one of the key lessons is solving the listener isn't more terrifying than solving a regular cryptic to a great extent. Yes, there are kind of some extra words in the clues that you're going to have to ignore, and that's a complication. And also, we will come across some letters some blanks in the grid where we don't have to fill in letters, and that's another complication. 2 down, infect, quite amusingly, actually, is in fact, requiring energy to replace A, and it means corrupt, so we get an extra word of aspect from that, which I've failed to fill in my notes downstairs there. And 3 down gave loot. Didn't see that clue a moment ago, so I think it was tool reversed or something. So yeah, as I was saying, you can make progress with the clues. Yes, it takes a bit longer than with a regular word, with a regular crossword, but you shouldn't be too scared. cryptic crossword is a cryptic crossword, even if it's a complicated one with a theme at the end. And the thing that makes listeners worth doing are that the themes can be very satisfying. So I've corrected Snow Mount and realised that the sermon was given on the Mount, and one in aircraft. What's that? Can't remember now. Snow, sermon on the Mount. One in aircraft. Oh, a in. Okay, so in fact, aircraft is an extra word in that clue. So it's snow on the Mount. Very clever usage of that. A and in. Like, you'll never get another chance to use on the Mount in a definition. 9 down, get together with a mother of 7 sons. Now, I was sure that that definition did give a mass. And A is A, mother is MA. 7 sons, or of 7 sons. I wasn't sure how that gave SS. And what I should have remembered is that there are a number of medieval Roman numerals, outside the normal I, V, X, L, M, D, C. There's also S, meaning 7, and some others meaning all sorts of other numbers. So what I should have worked out is that that clue was giving A, Ma, S, and S for sons, and that of, just that little of, was an extra letter. 10 down was honour, I assumed. Let's make sure we're not getting interruptions from my Outlook. 10 down was I assumed, I put into gone, which is an honour in the sense of medal representing an honour. And the condition of the course is going, so there were no extra words there. Now I'm still sort of scouting around the top and not really finding extra letters to put in. And to the extent that I might have been looking at this stage into the centre part and seeing what words might be forming in that, it doesn't look very promising with SG suddenly appearing there. So that wouldn't have really helped me form any conclusions, apart from that 6, 7 and 8 and 15 down might all extend into the middle, but certainly not obvious how that was going to work. So now it's time to sort of go back to look around for other clues that can be solved and add to the filling of the grid. And 31 across, called back and left a lump of wood. Well, called there is rang, and that's written backwards, and then L for left. And that makes gnarl, which is, again, one of these slightly odder words for a lump of wood. There's a gnarl in the wood. I think it's a knot of wood, particularly. And it's still, again, hoping that would give me some down work that I could do, but I couldn't do 28 or 29 down. So had another look at 40 across next. Original rumour to start in Starbucks coffee. Can't see what's going on there. And then why not try the long one? I don't think I could get it at this point. 17 letters again. We don't often see a 17-letter word in cryptics. Bug with fluid production function rendered obsolete dye blonde. And not really anything obvious that is going to come out of that. So I've had a look at 43 across as well, and that hasn't yielded anything. So kind of the fairly, as usual, I do better with letters in the grid, and I've kind of proved that there when trying to do a bit of cold solving without any letters in the grid. It hasn't gone very well. So having another look at 24 down, the local 1, that's normally local 1 is UN, because un is a dialect version of 1. But again, not much to cling on to in that clue, and certainly not a lot of obvious definitions. 16 down does look like an anagram. Treat rat badly. He keeps changing his account. I think the problem here was that I didn't know the solution. It is an anagram of treat rat, a 2-word phrase that fits the letters I've got in the grid, but he keeps changing his account didn't mean much to me, and I think it took until I had this extra T from gutty, and we'll come back to that, to figure out that rate tart was a possible phrase, and it's obviously somebody who kind of tarts his business around banks looking for the best rate, but not a phrase I knew before this. 26 across, as I say. American showing resilience has tense time cutting cord, and tense is T and time is T. They're two abbreviations that are very familiar to listener solvers, and they cut, i.e. get in the middle of guy, as in a guy rope, meaning a cord, and that gives us gutty, which is a US usage for kind of gutsy. 24 down. Now, I've somehow worked out from the T and the A that the local one, certainly not aboard US railway. The components there that I'm kind of familiar with are certainly not is no, and the US railway is ELL, so as in an elevated railway in Chicago or certainly other cities as well. And then the, THA, is the local one. I think that's because TH is a local form of the, and then A is one. And on has a meaning of half drunk. So ethanol is a form of alcohol. That could get someone half drunk. That's a pretty difficult clue. 40 across has become Venturi, which is original is UR, which is a kind of prefix. In a Starbucks coffee, which is original to start, is what's saying that. Rumour is an extra word. And the Starbucks coffee, which refers to a size of Starbucks coffee, is a venti. And a venturi is some sort of medical tube to restrict throughput. And that's enabled me to get on to 26 down, 28 down, where one version of the word anneal is ANELE, which gives us an extra word of as in that clue. And then finally 32 down. Luckily, it was very straightforward because there's a lot of extra letters that have gone into the centre here. Freaky, wacky cooking is not a three-letter answer. Wacky makes us use an anagram of freaky, and fakery is cooking in the sense of shamming, and that's one of the meanings of cooking. So fakery went in there. That's, again, not easy. Although possibly the only anagram of either freaky or wacky that was possible. So that enabled me to kind of make progress there. So it's beginning to come together again in the bottom left as well now. I've got a bit of a start going on, and having another look at 17 across. I think this may have been the end of my first session. I kind of got stuck here, or possibly even called away for a moment, and I couldn't see the answer to 17 across. As you can see, I've been filling in some of the extra words from clues down here, and we've got donkey and rumour in the acrosses, which is a bit strange, doesn't seem to make much. Now, it did say that only the downs would make a useful message. The acrosses were thematic, but the downs made a useful message. So the of and the as are kind of explained as words that we were going to need in that down message. Because obviously you can't make a message up straightforwardly without using some short words normally, and that's why they've appeared there. So I've moved on to 11 down there. Passive verb not used in reverse. Inert is defined by passive, and V for verb has not been used in invert, which is one of the meanings of reverse. So again, I've kind of given up on the bottom left and trying to make some progress in the top right. 21 across. Bush ranger had misgivings about catching lampreys initially with lines. Had misgivings is rude. If you put that, had misgivings about is rude. If you catch lampreys initially, which is the letter L, you get ruled, and that means with lines. So the bushranger is entirely extraneous and must be the extra word in the clue. And now I've got some letters coming up in the top right, so that might help me get moving. 12 down is get shot of each terribly late director. So that looks like each is going to be EA, then an anagram of late, and D for director. And I probably should have solved that a bit quicker, although I wasn't familiar with the phrase that is a 7-letter answer. But that turns out to be eat lead. Not quite sure how that means get shot of. It's obviously sort of some US originally reference to killing off, because or dying off. Eating lead is getting hit by a bullet. Now I'm looking at the long one, 5 across. Result of wasting special food plant on silver spirits exterior. Well, silver is often AG, and I've already got that in the grid. And I think what I needed to be focusing on there was the definition, which is probably result of wasting. And I'm having some trouble there. 19 down, Jockey Club expressed pain to host. And I've worked out that's publican. Expressed is an extra letter, an extra word. So you have to jockey to mess around with club pain, and you get host, which is a publican. You have to kind of jockey those words to something else, and that host is publican, as in a pub owner. So that's given me quite a bunch of letters, so I can now consider having a go at the right hand side. And 25 across, smooth rise of British nation with an L second letter, and B for British, land for nation gives bland, and that extra word seems to be rise there, so that's potentially helpful as well, although it's kind of adding to a list of seemingly unrelated words we're getting from the acrosses. And now I'm hoping to kind of manage to extend into the bottom corner, but that hasn't worked so well. Roman shields, and I'm enough of a classicist to have heard of a scutum, so that's immediately making me think scooter. Frame axe splits it works, as you can see. I've deduced that frame is an extra word, and so axe splits it is the wordplay, and axe is cut. To axe something is to cut it, and it, a bit of crossword ease here, SA for sex appeal, it used to be called it, as in an it girl and so on. 27 down, hard stone, smooth and slippery is steely, and despite the kind of long definition of eely, like an eel, as smooth and slippery there, I don't think there's an extra word in that clue, so hard is the definition. And now the bottom corner is beginning to start moving. Holly married and took root. Is that mate? The kind of drink from tea? I don't think it actually is. I can't remember quite what the answer is there. Holly married and took root. I think took. Root is an extra word, so took is the rest of the definition. I think mate, as in mate tea, is actually made from a cousin of the Holly family. So I think that answer is mate. We'll come, but I'm sure I'll solve that at some point soon. Down under, turn poorly after fluid's gone. And that is a word for a turn in Australia. It's a 180-degree turn, in fact. And you need to come up with a word for poorly and remove FL from that, which is the abbreviation for fluid. And in fact, it's worth knowing that it doesn't fill the whole space. This is finally one of those blanks that we haven't particularly identified at this stage. 12 down. I think I'm sure I'm able to figure out eat lead at this point. Yeah, and it goes. And 18 across looks a lot like ineptly, and the clue begins sadly. So it's I, and then can finally is the letter N. C here is Ely, which is a church C because it has a cathedral. About exercise classes is PT, and belly is an extra word, which I'm filling into my list of the extra words now. 15 down begins un. Loose, which is the definition. Change found but no farthing. So you have to change the letters of found without the F, which is farthing. And that gives you undo, which is a bit longer than the 3 space, but extends into the middle. And I wonder if if anybody's beginning to see what the song title that's going to appear in the middle section is. It's pretty difficult at this stage even to identify. 13 down, law evident after rectangle is reflected in glass. Well, silex is a type of glass, and the law is lex, which is evident after is reflected. And so rectangle is giving an extra word. And just as we thought from the preamble that there was something quite mathsy about the finish to the puzzle, we're getting words like rectangle and expressed as in the sentence or phrase that we're going to get there. So now I can see that this 5 across, a result of wasting, is probably going to end in ines. And I should be able at this point to make a hazard at that, but I finally have a look at 7 down. Cold American overdone porridge, and it helps to know some American slang here. Hokey is American for kind of cheesy or corny or overdone, and porridge can be choky, as in prison, or time served in prison is choky. So that's how that one worked. With that C and 5 across, I should be able to see that cragginess and scragginess would fit, and scragginess might be considered a result of wasting. So the way that's made up is, if I can remember, S for special, the food plant is cress, and that's on the exterior of AG for silver, gin for spirit. So that makes up scragginess, and this is where we've got our first positive extra cell that we're not filling in at the first cell of 5 across. That's one of the blanks that we're going to get in the puzzle. Now 6 down, fish beneath South Promenade. Promenade means to walk, so that's probably going to be the definition. I think I always balk a bit at clues that say fish or tree, because there are so many names of fishes and trees, I don't even know them all, that it's kind of a bit scary, and I'd probably stop thinking about that one. 8 down, initialized ratio of selenium and tritium. And that, interestingly, is reset is to kind of initialize a machine or something that's, if you're resetting it, you're putting it back to its initial status. And ratio of selenium and tritium. Well, selenium is Se and tritium is T. Of translates as re because it means to do with or concerning. So in fact, ratio is an extra word there. I'm not sure I'd worked that out while solving it. I think I knew that reset had to be the answer, but I haven't worked out exactly that ratio is the extra word. So doing pretty well here. I've only got 2 clues to go in the top half at all. And I finally thought of that I have heard of a fish called a troll, which if you put beneath south, you get promenade being to stroll. 17 across looks like Serosa, which is home counties parks is the word play there, and the home counties are SE, the southeast. That's fairly commonplace, but Parks ? That gives us Rosa, after the famous Rosa Parks, who the civil rights activist. That's very clever. And now you can kind of see in the middle that we're getting a bit of a song title here. What we've got written in already is let's go fly a k, and that might well mean something to you. So 25 down, loosely cover top line in poet's work. Loosely cover is bestrew, that's the definition. Top is best, and then line in poet's work gives rue, because I believe that REW is a Spencerian spelling of row. So that's how that one worked. It would obviously be very useful to get the 3 bigger crosses in the bottom section here, and that's why I'm kind of focusing on 41. Start to sail brigantine with instruction to lie alongside. Start to sail looks like the letter S. Brigantine, instruction. Well, in fact, sail is an extra word, so start to brigantine gives B, and if you put an instruction beside that, you get order, and to border is to lie alongside. So that would have worked. I think not guessing at the extra word at that point and not having any of the letters to help with that wasn't helping. 33 down, spottings not coming off, coating on sponge, for example. Well, coating on sponge is a fairly clear cryptic indication of something you put on a cake. So I was thinking of icing, and spottings not coming off is quite complicated wordplay. Spotting translates as noticing, and then you take not off that and you get icing. 35 down was erose, apparently nibbled last square of chocolate and got up. Square is an extra word, last of chocolate is E and got up is rose. And now I've got enough to approach 42 across. Bug, which is the definition, with fluid production function rendered obsolete, dye blonde. And I think the whole thing is an anagram of obsolete, dye blonde. That's been rendered to give bloody-nosed beetle. And the definition is therefore bug with fluid production, because, or maybe with fluid production function, because the bloody-nosed beetle can produce fluid, which is presumably how it gets its name. So now we've really got help in every word. So we've got a letter contributing to everything. 29 down, game component sent back without me wrapping it is module sent back without me wrapping it, i.e. on the outside you get Ludo. And there's another of our blanks. And again another one in 43 across, which turns out to be elbow grease. It's not given as a phrase because I think it's hyphened, and the Spanish violinist is elbow. Means of playing is oh no, the violist's means of playing is bow, and then musical is grease, and work is elbow grease. 34 down is tabor, which is abort when the T goes up in it, and that's a drum, so I'm beaten defines it. We've completed Let's Go Fly a Kite in the middle, so we kind of know what the theme is. And now area and odds go in at 36 and 37 down. Runs away from back of a rear. And hides, maybe. I think area can be measured in hides, which is why that is. 37 down, a theologian is DD, Doctor of Divinity, taking part in huge, which is OS for outsize, and dispute is odds, because to be at odds with somebody is to be in dispute with them. So now I should be able to get 39 Marte. Now I've got the T in it. And then 44 across was going to be Yui. Well done if you worked that out earlier. It's Flui without the FL. And that means that the bottom right corner is the final one of our blank spaces. And going along quite nicely now. So then we're going to have to finish off 23 down. Subprime expert with drive and bar degree, but it's worth noticing subprime are two separate words, so possibly they have to be read as sub as one word and then prime as the next. And in fact, sub is the definition. If you advance somebody money, you sub it to them, and the expert is advanced. Is it? I can't remember. Prime expert with drive and expert ace with drive DV and bar. Wow. Yeah. So you have to prime ace, which means expert. So you have to put into ace DV and except for the word degree. So it's a brilliant clue. I mean, the words in that are not doing what you think they're doing when you first read it. Prime just does not read in the original version as fill, and bar does not read as accept. So if you did read it as fill and accept, it would say sub, fill expert with drive and accept degree, and that would be more able to be parsed, but wouldn't obviously have any common sense in English, whereas subprime expert with drive and bar degree really does mean something. It's very clever. It means nothing like what the answer is, but it does mean something, and that's, I think, where we find the joy in the best cryptic clues, is they completely mislead you, not just about what definition they're getting at, but at how all the words in the clue work. We all know that bar can mean accept, and we all know that prime can mean to charge or fill something with something, but we're not expecting them to be used in this way. So now what I'm doing is trying to go through and be a little bit more rigorous on which the extra words are and in the clues, and what therefore they're making in certainly in terms of the acrosses, but also more importantly in terms of the downs. So I've kind of worked out one of the things I filled in wrongly in the downs is sub at this point, where I obviously had assumed that I think prime was the definition and not understood what its actual role was. And now I'm actually going through more carefully the first few down clues, and I can see aspect ratio of, and that's going to clearly help in understanding what the message that I'm getting from the down clues is. So aspect ratio of rectangle expressed as is going to make sense. So I think I'm going to have to work out that sub is not going to be the correct answer, which is something that obviously at this point I do need to do. And that will then help me untangle kind of the rest of the puzzle and work out how that's going to help. Now, I probably at this point had not fully understood even what the across extra words were providing. Belly, donkey, bushranger, rise, frame, rumour, sail. In fact, they are all definitions of kite, or they're things that a kite can be. So if you were to look up kite in Chambers, you would see most of these words as possible definitions. The exception there, I think, is donkey, which I got wrong in the clue, as I mentioned earlier. Hawk should have been the extra word in the clue to 20 across. So belly, hawk, bushranger, rise, frame, rumour and sail can all be words defined in Chambers under kite. It might actually be worth calling up Chambers just to confirm that, because it's quite interesting. I've just noticed there, obviously I'm questioning whether sub's right, and I've decided it was wrong, probably because I'm trying to interpret the message. So if we put in kite in Chambers, we get a long-tailed bird of prey of the hawk family, a rapacious person, a light frame covered with paper or cloth for flying in the air, a more complicated structure built of boxes, often for carrying recording instruments or a person in the air, a light additional sail, a rumour or suggestion, an accommodation bill, especially a mere paper credit, an aircraft, that's one of the words I should have spotted, to cause to fly like a kite, to rise sharply. So, and there's a second word, kite, from Scotland or Northern England, which means a belly. So that's kind of where all those definitions are coming from. And now I've got this narrowed down to aspect ratio of rectangle expressed as square root. And that's going to help me when I go and figure it out. So obviously at this point I'm kind of deducing that the whole thing's about kites. That's probably going to be the shape that we come up with when we do the paper folding as a kite. And there's me writing aspect ratio of rectangle expressed as a square root, which is a perfectly sensible message. And then I spend some time after that looking into the acrosses to make sure I'm getting the words right. But we've kind of already just had a look at what the point of the acrosses was there. And it is just to confirm that we're looking at kites. So just to wrap up this listener by zero, almost literally, I had to check a few of the clues using the dictionary, and it turns out we get 7 synonyms of kite. If you look up the entry for kite in Chambers, these words are all either mentioned or nearly mentioned, and that of course accords with what we were seeing in the grid with "Let's go fly a kite" appearing in the middle. And then the down message, I think I was very close to having it, is aspect ratio of rectangle expressed as a square root, which is a very mathematical and surprising term turning up there. But anyway, the way that we have to obey these rather interesting preamble instructions: solvers must make 2 folds bringing together pairs of empty cells, folding the smaller part under each time to form an almost perfectly symmetrical shape, and then a 3rd fold along the axis of symmetry. Well, it sounds fairly complicated. What it literally means is that you find there are 4 empty cells in the perimeter of the grid, and if you fold this one down in the corner under this one, so you've got a line between this cell corner and this corner, and you fold that into 2 so that blank square is underneath that blank square. And then you do the same with these 2 blank squares, a much smaller cut off of the corner on that line of symmetry. You fold the 43 under the 29, and then what you're getting, you haven't quite got a symmetrical shape at this point, but you will have, well, in fact it is nearly symmetrical. That's the astonishing thing, is you fold off 2 big corners of the grid, and what's left is almost perfectly symmetrical. And then you do the final fold along the axis of symmetry, which is, I think, from the bottom of this cell 26 up to this corner again. And the grid is then a kite shape, or once you open it out again, it's a kite shape. Now, it does say almost perfectly symmetrical shape, and then that the extra words in down clues describe a quantity closely approximated by the entire grid. And that aspect ratio, an aspect ratio you often see referring to a piece of paper, and this grid size was 17 by 12. So I've divided 17 by 12 to get 1.4166 recurring, then multiplied that by itself and we get 2.007, and that indicates that if you did this kite folding with a piece of paper with an aspect ratio of the square root of 2, then it would be a perfect kite shape, and this grid almost exactly does that, but not quite, because it's 2.007 rather than 2. Fascinating bit of maths. Didn't know much about that until I kind of looked up how to fold a kite from a rectangle in 3 folds somewhere, and that helped me understand how to create this grid. And then to submit the title, to submit the puzzle, solutions need not be submitted in folded form, but the creases must be evident. So that's what I did in my submission. I cut out a piece of paper printed from this and did the folds and then unfolded it again. I did also indicate the folds with pencil marks to make sure that the marker is clear what I've done. The quantity, 2 symbols, must be entered in the central area beside the song title, so just somewhere around here I entered square root 2 as the quantity. And that completes a fascinating listener, which I think all along was hinting that it was going to get quite mathematical, but did so surprisingly, and really went into kites in quite some detail. Very interesting solve, and most enjoyable. So I hope that's been instructive in some way. You may know more about the maths than I do, so it may be more straightforward to other people. But that was my solve of Zero's listener called, what was it called? I can't remember. A paper construction, which indeed it was. Thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you again on Cracking the Cryptic.
Let's go fly a kite. say.